hold on there. I gotta sign you in. Don't think I've seen you around. That means you must be new to Stellar Bay. You are new here, right? You must have seen those UDL gunships on your way in. There's only 3 of them these days. Still, they tend to scare folk off. You may not have heard, you being new, but Stellar Bay hardly ever gets off-road traffic, us being cut off by the board and all. Which means I never get to do this part, but I've been practicing, so here goes. On behalf of Monarch Stellar Industries, welcome to Stellar Bay, home of the freshest sal tuna in Halcyon. Please state your name for the records. Swell. There's one for the logs. I'm even gonna give you your own entry code. I'm not supposed to do that. It's against procedure, but Mr. Sanjar isn't so strict about the rules here. Besides, I got a lot of empty entries to fill. Oh, that'll just make Mr. Sanjar's day if you tell him. The board makes up lots of nasty stories about raptidons and cannibals and whatnot. But that's all outside our walls. Mostly.
Did he just say raptidons and cannibals? I can't wait.
Oh, sure. It makes Stellar Bay sound like a rotten place, but it's not so bad. Get a good breeze going, and the sulfur smell mostly covers up the fishy smell.
Ah, the nostalgic stench of home. Can't say I miss the day-to-day of living in Edgewater.
Anyway, Mr. Sanjar's got lots to say on that subject. Kinda goes over my head, though. We don't get ship traffic in town. Only off-worlders who do make it out here are sublight. They got a base in Fallbrook. And thank the stars for them, or we would have run out of Rizzo's Purple Berry Crunch years ago. Mr. Sanjar will be mighty pleased to meet you. If you see him over at headquarters, maybe you could tell him I did a bang-up job of welcoming you? Oh, and if you're headed that way, maybe you could do me a favor? I got this Rizzo's Rangers Tossball poster coming in on the next sublight shipment, signed by the Black Hole himself. Only I haven't heard anything in a while. You think you could check with Celia to see if it's come in?
Boss, come on. Black Hole Birdie, the Hole Meister, the Hack Attack.
That's Bertie Holcomb, only one of the greatest tossball hackers ever. Everyone's heard of him, even on Monarch. We still get some of the games. You been living in a sulfur pit or something? On account of him being the best hacker who ever played, nothing gets by him. He sucks up every ball that comes his way. While Holcomb's had a lot of nicknames over his career. Used to be the tallywhacker on account of what he'd do to the score. Before that, he was the slick stick, because his shots were always so smooth. I swear I'm not. At the start of his career, people called him the hack boss, but no one thought that was very catchy. I couldn't really say, I'm just a fan of the game. But the fancy collector types say the more people see these things, the less valuable they are. And I figure my poster's been passed around by more than a few people by now. Thanks a bunch! Celia works for Mr. Sanjar in the MSI building next to the bar. She's always there, so you can't miss her.
We're not the best equipped, but scouting for raps keeps us on our toes.
You don't look like sublight. Must be freelance.
Did I get another advance, Mr. Nandi?
Just make sure it's properly logged.
I'll note it next to the others, sir. Greetings, and welcome to Monarch Stellar Industries, producers and purveyors of the finest salt tuna in Halcyon. What can I do for you today? You know, sending you is the first bright idea I've seen from that man, because I told him to stop bothering me about it a week ago. I still don't know anything about it, but if you want to help him, Velma's the one to ask. She's in the warehouse. But I'll warn you, Grim wore her patience thin a long time ago. Not at all. Mr. Nandi treats us all right and pays us well. I just spent most of my paycheck on Raptidon acid. Laws, no. Sometimes it's canid teeth, or a mantis worm wings. Whatever Sebastian has in stock, really. So I can talk to him, of course. He doesn't get going about much else. Sort of the strong, silent type. Unfortunately, my apartment's kind of filling up with his stuff, and some of the neighbors are complaining about the smell. I couldn't. What if he says no? Hey, maybe you could ask him for me. I mean, a no would still be bad, but it won't be quite as embarrassing if you ask. Oh, Mr. Nandi's doing that thing where he breathes through his nose real slowly. I'd better get back to work. He doesn't talk much, but he's got this quiet intensity, you know? Like there's stuff going on inside his head that you have no idea about. Plus, he's got great legs. It's hard to find a man who doesn't skimp on lower body exercises. Not in Stellar Bay. Everyone else who isn't taken either smells like salt tuna or they're my boss. Besides, a man with a good smile and a proportionate upper to lower body ratio isn't something to pass up. You think that's what I'm looking for? You're funny. Sorry, sometimes I get carried away. Have you talked to Sebastian yet? What did he say?
Well, new business turns up at last. Celia, didn't I tell you our new statistics-based advertising model would be a hit?
That you did, sir.
How can yield improvements of 26.7% not quicken the pulse? How can 32% cost savings not moisten the loins?
You've often posed these very questions.
Clear my schedule. This newcomer has a meeting with me. Celia, will you make a note of that for my self-review? Very generous.
Noted.
But not so generous I can't drive a good bargain. Now, who sent you? Rizzo's, perhaps? Or Auntie Cleo herself? What a charming notion. One doesn't meet many free spirits in Alcyon. Not outside Tartarus prison, anyway. Forgive me, I'd be positively enraptured. Only, I take it this means you aren't here for Saltuna. Now, there's no need to humor me. I'm used to this particular letdown. I had hoped that livening up our advertisements with enticing figures would draw the other corporations back to our bosom, but it seems we're back to the drawing board. Thanks to the so-called hazard clause, Monarch has been cut off from the board's resources and protection for 10 years now. Now, we've kept ourselves in business by trading with individual corporations, but given the off-the-books nature of those transactions, such arrangements are precarious.
You talk like Graham.
Can't imagine why you'd sneer at the notion of a free colony. Could it be because you're an agent of the establishment?
I used to be young and idealistic too, but you can't run a city on high-minded ideals.
Exactly. Intellectualism fuels the train to mankind's future. But the tracks the train runs on are forged from practicality.
Sounds like something out of the chairman's own notes, Vic.
Yes, it's as though the good vicar has plucked the very words from my brain.
Well, Mr. Nandi here has a rather ingenious plan to get MSI restored to the board.
On our terms, mind you.
Returning to the board is your only chance if you hope to survive here on Monarch. That doesn't mean it'll be easily achievable.
Indeed not. No worthwhile plan was ever simple. That's what I always say.
And if our advertising scheme hasn't borne fruit, then perhaps it's time we took matters into our own hands.
It's true, our Celia is an alarmingly competent middle manager. At any other company, she'd be wasted in data entry. The plan she refers to is a two-pronged approach, and the first part involves seeing Stellar Bay properly defended. Not long, but the devil is always in the details. And the salient detail here is a Bolt 52 cartridge. If you can get us what we need to rejoin the board, starting the Bolt 52, we'll be able to become one of the most productive and secure cities in Halcyon.
And you'll have a powerful ally on the board.
Why, one of the strongest defenses in Halcyon. An extremely powerful ordnance.
I was starting to get bored listening to you until you said the phrase extremely powerful ordnance.
It is quite the rush. I'll need to gather some supplemental materials, but I mustn't get ahead of myself.
You do tend to do that.
The Bolt 52 will be in the old arms building southwest of town, which used to be part of Stellar Bay before we had to move our walls in. And these days, it's overrun with marauders and raptidons. Do be careful. I've lost more than a few people to marauders and raptidons out there. Oh, and while you're at it, there should be a terminal in the arms building with some dangerous information. Perhaps you could delete it so it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. What can I do for you? Then it's good that I keep such meticulous notes. I've asked myself the same thing many times, especially seeing as the legal mechanisms we employed were part of the board's own bylaws. Not intentionally, though that's technically true. For many years, this planet was home to as many corporations as Terra 2, but back then it was known as Terra 1. Really? I always thought they were refreshingly straightforward names. After all, the whole point of terraforming was to make them Earth-like.
Here, though, the results were mixed.
And as the other corporations began to tally their losses, they decided to pull out. Our leadership at the time certainly wanted to.
And how did that work out?
Most regard Monarch as a lost cause. But there were others of us who saw an opportunity. The chance to improve working hours and conditions, to reform MSI from the ground up. It's humane, but it's also good business sense. Exhausted, sick, and malnourished workers are not productive workers. Even a cursory review of the data bears that out. Anyway, we learned of a loophole in the corporate bylaws that would allow MSI to claim ownership of the entire planet once the other corporations pulled out, creating the perfect environment for us to enact these new reforms. That's what I thought. But the senior executives laughed in our faces and insisted we'd be relocating to Terra 2 along with everyone else. Yes, some of us stayed behind, and as the most senior executive remaining, I ended up in charge of what was left of MSI. I moved forward with our planned reforms, as well as our strategy to assume ownership of the planet. Yet not long after I renamed it Monarch, The other corporations dislodged us from the board and began an official campaign to paint us as lawless savages. I don't know. Everything we did was legal and above board. We followed their rules, and yet they still found reasons to declare us outlaws.
Your first mistake was expecting the board to cut you a fair deal.
I understand the sentiment, but if we can't rely on some sort of framework, then what do we have? I do think there's something useful in a governing body like the board. Something that keeps us from anarchy, but I dearly wish it functioned differently. Why wouldn't anyone? They own nearly all the resources and infrastructure in Halcyon.
Yeah, and once you go back to him, he'll own your dignity too.
Without the board, chaos would overtake the system. Working within the established order isn't a principle to snub one's nose at, Captain.
To be on the board is to be part of the colonial community, and being cut off means slow strangulation. Indeed, we've got to consider realities, not ideals. If membership on the board can ease our hardships and provide us with opportunities, then that's the path I mean to pursue. Besides, I'm hopeful that additional leverage on our part will allow us a more equitable relationship.
Don't get ahead of yourself, sir.
Yes, it'll be easier to explain once we have the Bolt 52. My hope is to maintain the reforms we've managed here, and who knows? Perhaps once we're restored, we could spread them to other corporations. It's a legal provision that gives the board the authority to cordon off any planet or location that it deems dangerous.
A necessary evil for the greater good of society.
That's exactly how the board describes it. Yes, making all of MSI criminals in the board's eyes. Rather hard to run a business that way. He and his followers call themselves the Iconoclasts. Lawless anarchists, all of them. If anyone on Monarch deserves the reputation the board's pinned on us, it's them.
I will admit, I am keen to meet their leader.
Well, be careful what you wish for. Graham has a habit of ruining everything, and everyone around him. A chance! They've been doing this for years, and well, let's just say I know enough about Graham to be confident that he won't change. It isn't just that they drain our people and resources. Every radical act they commit cements Halcyon's image of us all as destructive rebels and pushes us further from the rest of the colony.
So, what's the downside?
Shall I begin with the supply shortages or the subtle but constant threat of annihilation? He's lucky the board doesn't take him seriously enough to keep more than a few UDL gunships patrolling Monarch.
An Earth Directorate assault cruiser would change his tune. It's almost a shame we haven't seen one around Monarch in a long while.
What can I do for you? Hiram? Why, he's probably still out at Devil's Peak. Not that he's had the courtesy to notify me, at any rate. You'd head south along the road and look for a mountain to the west. Not that I'd advise it. It's a terribly dangerous trek. But if you insist on going, I'd recommend taking a local guide. Nyoka would be a prime candidate.
If you can keep her sober.
I see. And was his delivery of the MSI authorized greeting up to snuff? Well, that's excellent. I'll see that your feedback makes it into his review. What else can I do for you?
Wrapped musk and canid eyes, right here. Hello, stranger. Can I interest you in a raptidon tongue? Or maybe some canid toenails? You look like a man who's looking for some mostly fresh animal parts? I don't know. Celia usually buys whatever I have, and Mr. Pickett seemed real interested. So I thought maybe I was onto something. Nice of you to say. I like her too. Wait, I see what's going on. She put you up to this so she could get a discount, hmm? Don't get me wrong. I'd like to give her a discount. She's a real fine lady. Always talks nice and slow, so I understand. But if I give her one, I won't hardly make a bit, on account of no one else having any use for raptidon tongues. You sound pretty sure. And she is awful nice. Okay, I'll do it. Once her shift ends, we'll go someplace nice. Maybe to Chef Raymond's. You look like a man who's looking for some mostly fresh animal parts? He came to Stellar Bay years ago, just before the board cut us off. Ended up stuck here. He was always real interested in our monsters. Mantiqueens, especially. Who wouldn't be? He kept talking about collecting a queen to take back to Terra 2. Didn't make no kind of sense to me. Mantiqueens won't let you collect them. Sure, they're real big. Hard to miss them. Well, I could send you to the same place I sent Mr. Pickett. But I haven't seen him in a few weeks. To tell true, I'm starting to get a bit worried about him. Tell you what, I'll tell you where I sent Mr. Pickett if you promise to look for him. Help him out if he's got himself in trouble. Fair deal? All right then. Leave town through the southern gate, the one right here, and head past the abandoned ruins. Last Mantiqueen I saw was in the wilds out that-a-ways. Could be Mr. Pickett still out there too.
Have you talked to Sebastian yet? What did he say? Okay, but how did he say it? Did he sound excited? Or like he was just agreeing to it? Was he like, yay, a date with Celia? I've secretly been waiting for this. Or was it more, sure, I don't have anything else going on? Not to worry. If I never buy another Raptidon tongue, it'll be too soon. Ah, look at me going on. I'm sure you've got other things to do, and Mr. Nandi's giving me that back-to-work look. Anyhow, thank you.